Hey everybody, welcome back to Back a Lot Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as always by Mr. Andrew Roscoe, and we're here today for another episode of My Story Show, and it's a special one. It's a very special one because we are here today doing something a little bit different. We've been doing a lot of show reviews on this program here because there have been some really interesting Star Wars shows as of late. But today, we want to have a little bit more of a personal conversation, a little bit more of a conversation that engages with the culture of Star Wars, because we're recording this in the year of the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, and I just wanted for us to take some time to reflect on this film because I think it holds a significant place in both of our hearts, but for different reasons, and I want to get into that and sort of and talk about that personal dimension, but also because I think that there's something to be said for the fact that with the release of Revenge of the Sith, there was a real drought of Star Wars films, right, that lasted 9 years or 10 years before Force Awakens. Of course, we had, don't tell me in the comments, we had the Clone Wars movie. I saw it in the theaters.
Yeah,
I was
too.
there.
Yeah,
I was there. I remember Stinky. I remember Rhoda the Hutt coming back in Mandalorian and Grogu. But I think that there's something interesting about Revenge of the Sith entering into this period of kind of unknown for Star Wars. And as we reflect on it, we're kind of leaving that period as we finally are soon to get back into some theatrical Star Wars.
Hopefully.
we can at least be pretty safe in saying that Mandalorian and Grogu is going to come out. But Andrew, before we really get into this, before I sort of throw it over to you to hear some of your thoughts about Revenge of the Sith and kind of where you were in life when you first encountered it, I want to do a little show and tell. The camera angle is a little low because I got the Millennium Falcon up there, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't even think I put this on the Discord. Look at this right here. Ooh, look at that. Little ATT, Lego ATT.
Oh, that's dope. That's cool.
Put the cannon down. And it's fitting. Not only is it cool, but we have 212th troopers in here because Captain Cody there.
Yeah.
It is the Battle of Utapau. Right on the box. So look at that. Made sense to buy this. I had to. We're talking about Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, you gotta have Commander
What
Cody.
choice did I have?
Blast him.
Exactly. But Andrew, let's really get into it now. I'm curious. Let's just go. Let's get some biographical information out here to begin the conversation. Where were you when the film came out, and kind of what did that mean to you at the time?
All right. Physically, I was about 60 or 70 miles away from where I am right now. I lived closer to LA, down in Norwalk. I remember. I remember just feeling very, very excited because...
How old were you at the time?
I was 14 years old.
Okay.
I was 14 years old. And it's crazy to think about it going... I feel so old thinking like this was 21 years... Well, 20 years ago for the movie. 21 years ago from when I saw that first teaser trailer, though.
Sure.
I don't know if there was a show back in the day on Fox called The OC. Not sure if you're familiar with it, Abram, or not. But the OC teased, or at least Fox teased during one of the, I want to say it was around November or December 2004. It's crazy to think that far back. But they had like a teaser that they were going to show the Revenge of the Sith like teaser trailer, and I was like, I'm all in. I'm gonna watch this.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting through that episode of the OC. I saw it every now and then. But just kind of just waiting for like, okay, are they going to show it during the episode? Are they going to show it at the end of the episode? What's going to happen? And what happened was they had Adrian Brody. I don't know if you've seen him in other stuff or not, but he was in the OC. And there's like a little transition where at the end of the episode, as the credits are rolling, he basically kind of has like here's the trailer for Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith, right? And I remember watching that trailer and just like I hadn't seen the trailer in so long, like since then. But in retrospect, it's crazy how much they basically just tell you the entire plot there of exactly the. Yeah. I don't trust putting them together. They're talking about Palpatine and Anakin and everything, and it's crazy how much of that plot is just basically just spelled out for you. And I just remember seeing the end of the duel where you just see two blue lightsabers. I had very little context. I had to watch it very like. YouTube wasn't really a thing back then, so I couldn't rewatch the trailer if I wanted to. So I was just like glued to the set. And I remember the part where you just see two blue lightsabers against like a burning lava background. And I'm like, oh, like they're gonna do it. That's gonna be like the big, centerpiece, the big end thing. And then it was over, and I was like, I had no way to rewatch it. I was just I remember going online. I think it was I don't remember if it was one of the social forums for Game Facts, because that was the closest thing I had. They had like a Star Wars adjacent like social board there. People like analyzing, people who had who were smarter than I, who had recorded like the teaser on their TV and stuff and going over it. And like I just remember wanting to like. That was like one of the first times I was really involved in like online community, was trying to like with others. No one in my family really cared. No one like I really knew cared. So that was like my window to like the other people who I knew would be interested in that, and just like going over it. And I remember as soon as I saw that trailer, Abram, I was back. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start reading the EU again. Like I kind of fallen off a little bit since like Attack of the Clones. I wasn't super into like the expanded universe stuff, but like once that trailer is like, I was hyped, Abram. I was trying to, at the stores, looking out, looking at Target, looking at Walmart, like any Star Wars toys, just looking out and stuff. And I was enthralled again. Like we're back. We are back.
Yeah.
We're doing full space battles. Like we have all this stuff going on. Like I'm excited. And then between when that came out and to the premiere of the actual movie, there was I want to say the week before the movie came out, I was watching, I don't know if it was the same week or the week before. It's fuzzy. We're talking about 20 years ago. There's of course the famous Fox show American Idol. I'm sure you've heard of it before. And I remember I was so pissed, Avery. I was so pissed that I could not be in that audience, because they had a surprise, like I guess where they filmed American Idol, next door was the Nokia Theater. And so what they did was the week before, they surprised a guest audience that was there for American Idol, and it's like, okay, now you guys are all invited to come next door, walk through those doors. That was Ryan Seacrest talking. If you don't know Ryan Seacrest, that's fine. But anyways, he was the host of the show, and he said, okay, guys, on your side. And I looked it up too, because I was like, is it on YouTube? I did find it on YouTube. And he just says like, okay, you're going next door to watch the premiere of Revenge of the Sith. And I was so pissed, Abram, because I guarantee you none of those people who were there for American Idol gave a damn about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, like I wish I was there. And I felt like that was like the first time I felt severe like FOMO, because those people were about to go watch Revenge of the Sith like a few days before it even premiered, and I just know that none of them would appreciate it nearly as much as I would. And so that's kind of the gravity. I remember like I was in ninth grade. This would have been ninth grade for me, first year in high school. I had some friends who were very excited about Star Wars. They were making plans to go see the movie too. I lived further away from them, so I couldn't really go. But I went with my dad. My dad was cool enough to take me that Thursday midnight premiere. I ran into some friends who I saw like in the same auditorium. I thought it was one of those things that's not really important, but I remember this very clearly because I was like, oh, cool. Like I sat like above them. They were probably like 4 or 5 rows beneath me, but it was cool because I was kind of there with my friends, sort of.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to get into the plot, but I will never forget seeing that film in theaters for the first time.
And how did it hit you when you saw it? Was it what you hoped it would be?
I mean, I remember leaving that theater and being really bummed, but not because of the quality, but just because of where the story has to end, right? Where it has to leave us. Very bittersweet. I remember leaving that theater and just kind of being crestfallen and just being like, oh man, like I had never, this was like before, Avengers, Infinity War, where I wasn't used to like a sad, bitter ending kind of for a film. Sure. Like, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't used to that yet. And seeing like, well, yeah, it makes sense. They have to end here because they're setting up everything. I just remember being really bummed. And like my dad I remember specifically my dad saw that I was bummed. He's like, what's wrong? I was like, oh, it's like, damn, like that movie ended kind of sadly. Like it sucks. And he's like, well, they're going to win in the end. I'm like, yeah, I guess that's true. So my dad kind of like cheered me up a little bit. I'm like, well, it has to happen this way. And I just remember thinking like, man, like that's the last Star Wars, Abram. I really thought like, that's it. There's, I was lucky I got to live in this time and experience this, but like no, like, yeah, George said that he's done and like, that's it. There's not gonna, maybe continuations on something else. I don't even think I hadn't even thought about Clone Wars being its own thing yet. Never thought of like Star Wars Underground, like that show that he wanted to start. I don't think I even
Yeah.
heard about that yet. Like I just thought, okay, Star Wars is just going to be video games and books from here on out. And so I remember I was sad. Again, I love the movie, but just that bitter ending. You know, Obi-Wan kind of, you know, he's like on Tatooine and just
Yeah.
like okay, I'm gonna have to watch, you know, Luke from far away, and then we had that beautiful the binary sunset, and it's just like I remember I got teary eyed. I definitely got teary. I don't think I full on cried, but I remember getting teary eyed because I was like, oh, it's over. But I'm like, oh, it's such emotional, just such an
Yeah.
emotional thing to experience. And yeah, that was 14-year-old Andrew having to be cheered up by his dad. Like, you know where they end up, you know how everything has to happen, you know, like, you know, Luke's gonna grow up and do all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I know, but like it's sad to see it. Like, you know what happened to Padme, what happened to Anakin, and like so yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much, and because part of the reason I want to have this conversation with you is because I think it, you know, as I was mentioning earlier, it is one of the turning points in Star Wars, as you say, narratively, but also from the perspective of fandom and from the perspective of community, and thinking that that's the end cap. And obviously now we know, 20 years removed, that it was far from it.
Never would have imagined
Yeah,
where we'd be
yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Yeah, and I think that that's so amazing, right? Because I never really lived that. Obviously, I'm many years younger than you, so when the film came out, I was 4,
That
and
sounds about
so the thing about it though is that I still actually remember it quite vividly in some ways, that period of time. And I think because this is around the time that I was becoming a Star Wars fan. You know, I'm only starting to go to preschool and like have interests. You know, it's as funny as that is to say, like, oh, what kind of lunchbox do I want? I want a Star Wars lunchbox, things like that, right? And so
Oh, he's got the Star Wars backpack and everything.
yeah, like when I think back to that period, you know, there's I think of these like very vivid small memories I have that I think kind of indicate what a cultural phenomenon it was. And I'm curious sort of for your insight on some of these touchstones. But I remember being in the living room of my of a family friend's house. We're there for dinner, and so, you know, I'm extremely young. I'm like 4, and I remember the Clone Wars microseries that we've talked about on this show
Yeah.
on the TV,
Yeah.
and being so interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, this is separate, but I remember my parents getting me Burger King and the Burger King toys from that period. And I remember commercials, and I remember the lightsaber spoon and the box of cereal,
Yeah.
and all of these
I had
things.
one of
And
those too. I had one of those.
yeah. And so it's this is part of what's so interesting in this conversation to me, and I keep reiterating that, but all of these little touchstones are sort of sticking in my head. And for a kid, all this stuff is amazing. I'll look at this cartoon. I'll look at these cool toys you get. Even in your cereal box, you get a cool Star Wars toy, right? From the perspective of someone who's a little older at this time, what was sort of that like cultural saturation of Star Wars like? Because in my mind, so many of my earliest memories are associated with how, at least it felt to like you know, very young Abram, that Star Wars, that Revenge of the Sith was everywhere. It was on TV, it was in the restaurants, it was in toy aisles, it was everywhere.
Well, like I said, I remember watching the film in theaters, and I remember the next week. For some reason, I think because it was so late, I didn't go to school the next day on Friday. But I remember next week, I catched up with friends in high school. We were talking about it. Just certain people, not other people, kind of just saw it and they just moved on with their lives. I like Captain America, but we don't move on. So I was like, I remember seeing. The major thing was I was going to Borders. Back then, Borders was a competitor to Barnes and Noble. I mean, you've probably seen them before. They're not. I don't think they're really around anymore. But I remember going to the Borders at the mall and seeing an influx of like Star Wars books just in general. There was Star Wars coloring books they had. They had obviously more of the EU stuff. They had like I think like I remember seeing a behind the scenes book of Revenge of the Sith. I remember the first time I actually saw what General Grievous looked like not in the film or not even the micro series. It was actually a
Yeah.
cover of, I don't know if it was Empire magazine or one of those wizards or something like that. But seeing that droid skull like face, I was like, oh, this is gonna be so cool. Before I even knew he had like, 4 appendages and lightsabers and stuff, I was like, oh, that's such a cool thing.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that specifically at that same Borders, like I don't know how many months before the film came out.
That actually reminds me, and this is something that I've always been curious to get someone's perspective on. A piece of trivia that I love, Star Wars trivia from around this time, is that Lego Star Wars the video game, which was
Yes.
foundational in my life. It's one of the first video games that I had as a kid that I could like actually play and understand.
I still have my PS2 copy, yeah.
Yeah, but that game predated the film by like 2 months almost.
Did it really?
And so,
I'm
yeah,
trying to
and
remember
so
that.
I just checked here. The release date in North America was the 29th of March 2005. So that was what, 6 weeks before the movie came out ish, 5-6 weeks. Either way, it was before it.
About 5. Yeah.
And
5 or
so
6, yeah.
the plot is in like the plot of Revenge of the Sith is just in that game. Obviously, it's Lego-fied, so it's abstracted, but the beats are in there. Do you remember anything from the point of view of like the plot leaking or people knowing what it was going to be before you went in?
I knew certain things, just like I heard from my friends at the playground telling me that Palpatine was the Emperor, and like back then I was like, is he really? And then I'm like, oh well, duh, yeah, because even the EU called him by that name before like the movies even came out. I didn't play Lego Star Wars until August because I remember August is my birthday. And so I didn't even get to play it. I got it for my birthday, so I completely dodged that spoiler.
Yeah.
And then I want to say that one of my cousins, he rented the official Episode 3 video game.
Also up before the movie.
Yes, from Blockbuster. Yeah, he got it for, before the movie. I don't know if he played it. He played it probably like the week before, and we were back in the old days when we used to call each other. That's when we couldn't text or anything. We call each other, and he's like, "Oh, like I just rented it from Blockbuster, like the Revenge of the Sith game." I'm like, "Oh, like is it cool?" He's like, "Yeah, it's really cool. It's really good." And he's like, "Oh," and then at the end, like he tells me like, "Oh, like you have to choose." I think he says you have to choose as one of them to fight each other. I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, okay, well, like, yeah, that makes sense. That lines up with everything he says in A New Hope with like, when I left you, I was a learner, but now I'm like, okay, that kind of lines up. And I think he wanted to tell me more about like, I was curious about like, how do we go from all these Jedi down to 1 or down to 2? And I was curious, but I think he started explaining. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll just see it. I think I kind of stopped. I remember stopping him before he went to detail, but he basically spoiled the ending, which I mean. Again, I kind of knew that kind of had to happen just because of where we start off, where we, A New Hope and all that. But I was lucky to dodge. Again, I didn't play Lego Star Wars till that summer after the film came out because I got it for my birthday. And then I didn't play Revenge of the Sith game. Like, I still haven't played Revenge of the Sith game, but my cousin almost he spoiled like the major thing, which in hindsight, I guess I should have known that was going to be what happens. But he didn't tell me like, he was going to say, oh, that the clones turn on the Jedi. I had no idea that was going to happen. So I was able to, I wasn't as tuned. There was no Twitter. There was no like, YouTube. I don't think, I'm pretty sure YouTube wasn't even a thing until like that summer, I think, when it first started. And like, I had no idea. There was no way, you had to go out of your way basically to get spoiled or, rent the game or something.
Yeah, because I remember before Force Awakens came out, I got spoiled in the comments of a unrelated video that Han gets killed. I remember just being so bummed out. It's one of those things where like you see a spoiler and like you try to tell your brain like you didn't see that, but in your heart that you saw it.
All right, I appreciate people who put fake spoilers sometimes just to kind of do the little kind of little shuffling of the cups kind of thing with so you're not really sure if it was spoiled or not. I appreciate it when people do that, but I for Force Awakens I was there day one, Thursday midnight, or I think even was it 9 or 10 o'clock? I don't remember, but like I was very smart in avoiding spoilers, and I just wasn't really into like the whole like Twitter sphere at that time, so I got lucky with that one.
It's funny, the Revenge of the Sith game in some ways is like planting fake spoilers because I've not played. Well, it's funny because I had it as a kid, but I had the Game Boy Advance version of it, which
It was pretty
Interesting.
good. I heard that one's pretty
It's
good.
actually really good.
Yeah.
It's a beat 'em up game, and actually a lot of the people that worked on that game now work at Dotemu, making games like TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, or the new Marvel
That makes
Cosmic
sense. I can see
something.
that. Yeah.
So that's actually a really good game, but obviously very different. But I know like the PS2 version has a lot of sort of divergent paths and things that aren't actually in the film. But I digress. I just think that that's sort of again, it's an interesting reflection of that cultural moment. You know, like if yeah, think about how hard it is to dodge spoilers. Now, I think about, and I think we've even remarked in some of our episodes, you know, of the show that we've done. Andor, great example. If I'm not watching Andor the minute those episodes come out, I am getting spoiled on everything in them by 9 a.m. the next morning. And so to think that the plot of the film just existed in these different avenues, like 6 weeks before the movie came out, it's very interesting to me. But what about the Clone Wars micro series? Were you watching that at all? Were you dialed into that at all?
I was completely dialed in for that. I watched that religiously. I don't remember how I can't remember exactly how they spread it out over the course of a few weeks, or if it was like 2 weekends. I don't remember exactly. I just remember I watched as much as I could. It was a little hard to watch all of it back then. We didn't have like a There was no way to I mean DVR was a thing to record, but like my parents used the TV so much I was low on the priority list for recordings or anything, so I had to catch it live. I remember watching it, being in my bedroom and like watching it when I could. I'm pretty sure they showed it during the weekends. I want to say they showed it during the weekends is when I saw it. But like if I wasn't home that weekend or we had something to do with the family or something, then I just kind of. So I try to watch it as much as I could. I try to catch it. I try to like. I remember telling my parents like, "All right, are we gonna be back by this certain time? 'Cause, like, I want to watch it." And there was no guarantee that they're gonna be able to pull it out because for a kid like they're gonna be like, "Your cartoon doesn't. You're 14. You probably shouldn't be watching cartoons." So they did not care at all. But I just remember trying really hard to watch that because. I was in the live for like the holiday special, okay,
right.
or for like Ewoks or droids or whatever. Like that was the only time I remember like there being like TV Star Wars. That's this little crazy like exaggerated facial expression cartoon, which was like super heavily animated in its execution and everything, and like that was the coolest thing, just seeing Mace doing like flip off that giant droid harvesting thing and doing the bullet punches, and like that was the only context we got for what was going on in between like episodes 2 and 3. Like I imagine there was probably, I remember seeing like there was a book series of like in between episode 1 and 2. I remember there was like books about young Anakin and stuff like that as like a Padawan. They were like for like kids, kind of like those young adult, those little 80 90 page books or something.
I had a lot of those. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so like they kind of like they imagine like an older Christopher, what's his name, trying to remember, the Jake Lloyd, like somewhere between you know what I'm talking about, with like with the braid, and it's like it's somewhere between like Hayden Christensen, somewhere between Jake Lloyd, just this random kid who kind of looks like he would be in the in between stage, kind of like the middle evolution in a Pokemon kind of thing. And just like, okay, let's slap on like a random title, and like and I remember reading like 1 or 2 of those, and like it was like for like assigned reading for school or something, and just kind of vaguely remembering like, oh, okay, so yeah, this happened in between, but I didn't pay too much attention to it. I don't know where that ranks on the canon,
sure,
especially since all this stuff has been thrown out anyways by Disney. So but yeah, I remember seeing there was a lot of excitement, at least for the people that I knew, like my cousins who were not like super, they're big into video games, but like Star Wars for them was like just almost as special to them as it was to me. Like there was I was fortunate around this time. I want to say, do you remember when did they release the special edition for the original trilogy, the DVD ones, like the gold and the silver box?
It is so funny you say this, because I've been Googling this in the background, because this is important to my story too, because the gold label ones my dad bought me, and I remember that so specifically.
We had that
that's
one.
how I was introduced to the original trilogy. Yeah.
We had that one. We had the VHS tapes. We had the VHS tapes when I was younger. Like I was probably like 6 or 7. That's where I first saw the original films. But we hadn't had a VCR player since like 98. So I hadn't really seen them except when I would catch them like on HBO or something like that. So I hadn't seen them in a while. But like in between episodes 2 and 3, getting that, I want to say it's between those in between those two releases is when
Yeah,
that, like 2004, I want to say. Maybe
yeah.
2000.
I just found it here. There's a 2004 release,
Okay.
and there's a 2006 release as well.
Okay,
They
definitely
were,
2004
yeah,
one. That was the
yeah,
one. I remember my dad got that and we're like, oh, like, whoa, well, we don't have we have finally we have a DVD player, we have DVDs, and I just remember like getting into that again, probably right before the teaser for episode 3. So I was like in the perfect,
yeah,
perfect kind of mixture of Star Wars content being prevalent in my life and relevant and everything, and we're all like I was just like this is, it sounds stupid, but like this is the most important thing to me right now. Is
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
and
course.
Abram, dude, I remember like at that time because I used to ride my bike a lot. I remember it's a little embarrassing. I remember loving to ride my bike around the twilight hours when the sun's going down and pretend like I was like Anakin on that speeder in Attack of the Clones where he's like off to
Yeah,
like, you know what I
yeah.
mean? I remember like
Hmm.
riding my bike and the sun going down, like, filtering through the trees on the horizon. And I just like, I was like at the perfect age of where like I'm like a teenager, not an adult yet, not a kid either. It's just somewhere like it just hit me perfectly. Where I'm back into this, like after not being into it since like I was a kid, like it just kind of all came back to me. And then I
Yeah.
didn't even mention like playing Kodor like the year before, like this was like mid 2004, I want to say. So like mid 2004 playing Kodor, because I think it came out 2003, but I didn't play it till 2004 because I didn't have an Xbox. My cousin had an Xbox, so I played on his. And between that and the release of Revenge of the Sith, that 1 year basically, just
Yeah.
I was locked in, Abram. I was Darth Andy. Okay, I was locked in. I was all
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah, the point about the box set's so interesting because to me the way I ended up encountering Star Wars first was all on DVD.
Mm.
It was that box set original trilogy, and then as it pertains to Revenge of the Sith in particular, after I had this period of time when I hadn't seen it, but had the toys, and I so vividly remember the packaging for the Star Wars toys at the time with the Darth Vader helmet in the
Mm.
background, the
Hmm.
flames engulfing it. Like
Yes,
I very specifically remember that, and I had a lot of those toys. And I was, I had the original trilogy.
dude. I remember in the that was the first time I bought a lightsaber, like a toy lightsaber with
Sure.
the extendable ones. I remember my cousins. That's summer 2005 when they were still at Target. I don't know how, I don't know if they ever got rid of them or if they just kept them for I don't know how long. But I remember going to Target like that summer and like we each bought. You can imagine that he was a little bit older than me, so you can imagine this 14 and 15-year-old in the backyard just swinging plastic tubes at each other. Bro, it was like the funniest thing ever, and I just like twirl, twirl. It's like I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen that YouTube video of the guy playing with pretending he had a lightsaber in the backstage. I'm sure everyone's seen that famous video, but that was basically us, except there was no camera, and it's just both of us just swinging at each other with these extendable short little lightsabers. And I forgot that was like one of the major toys I remember actually like did end up buying around that time.
I mean, I was doing the same. My cousin and I were doing that all the time, and we had between us we had a little small collection of I had Anakin's saber,
Mm.
and I had a couple. I remember they would sort of take Anakin's hilt and release a couple different
Yeah.
colored sabers off of
Yeah.
it. So I had a couple of those.
I
And
like
then
the Qui
remember,
Gon one. I remember I had the Qui Gon one because that one
yeah,
was less bulky. There wasn't like random rectangles or squares on
hmm,
it. It was very slim, and so I was actually able to kind of twirl it between my. I remember I could twirl it between my fingers easier because with the Anakin one, I would get caught like the little block
yeah.
would get caught between my fingers and like let's switch. I don't like this one.
I had my favorite was I had a Mace Windu saber,
Oh, I don't remember that one that well.
and like I remember that very vividly. But in terms of how I encountered the film, then again I was sort of involving myself with the sort of this moment of Star Wars' history through the toys, through the micro series when I was able to catch it on TV in these random moments. But and then again original trilogy through DVDs, and then one Easter I remember in my Easter basket was a DVD copy of Revenge of the Sith.
Oh,
And that's how I saw it for the first time. But, and this is a very important detail, my parents were wise to the violence in the film.
oh
And
god.
so I was only allowed to watch a portion of it. I don't, and it would, I had to stop before the Mustafar fight.
That makes sense.
So
Okay, I figured it was gonna be that part.
yeah, I don't actually, I can't actually recall the first time I saw it all the way through. I don't remember. But for a long time, I would just get to watch parts, and so I loved the opening, of course.
Oh,
Wonderful
dude,
opening.
yes.
And I also loved the scant scenes we get on Kashyyyk, and so there's these parts of it that I always revisit. But I mostly traveled through the whole story again through the Lego Star Wars game, and it wasn't until many years again I don't remember exactly when that I actually saw it unbroken. But obviously since then I've seen it many times, and part of what had me interested in us having this conversation is that Revenge of the Sith was re-released in theaters earlier this year, and I went.
Me too.
And that was the first time I got to see it in theaters.
That's cool.
And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was just unbelievable. You know, this is just months ago, right? So I'm of the same mind that I'm of now, right? So I'm watching the film, and it was like almost a little emotional, as you were saying about your viewing. I think that this is a film that is so well suited to the theater, to the scale of the theater. Obviously, all of Star Wars is, but there's something to me sort of uniquely grand about this film, about how it opens, about the planets we go to, the sort of sense of stakes and weight in the narrative. And so, you know, seeing it on the theater, on the theatrical screen, seeing it unfold, the quips, the action, the real heavy dark moments, and I still believe that that watching Anakin get burnt alive is still a little bit shocking. It all, seeing it unfold in the theater was so special, and it was having me recall when I was not only seeing it as a kid only in pieces, but mostly watching it on this tiny flip open DVD player that I had.
Oh, you had one of those?
I did, and I loved it so much.
That's
and
funny, because I remember my cousin had one of those. I think she got it for Christmas, like 2006 or 2005. She had like a little silver one. It was basically just like a mini laptop with a DVD
it's probably
player.
the same one.
Yeah, it probably was
mine was silver too, chunky little thing.
Yeah. That's funny.
But you know, the film for so long was sort of less of a singular work as I view it now, and more of like a piece of this larger puzzle of mid 2000s Star Wars. You know, it was not just a movie; it was all these toys, and it was the cartoons, and it was the games, and it was everything. I think that obviously is how Star Wars is for a lot of people, especially when they're first meeting it. And this is, you know, there's this, I think, sense that all of us have as Star Wars fans. And some of us, I think, weaponize it in a way that I don't like, but everybody has something that is Star Wars to them more than anything else. For a lot of people, that's the original trilogy. For me, it's Revenge of the Sith. Like, when I think of Star Wars, I think of Revenge of the Sith. I think of this tone, I think of these characters, I think of this arc, I think of this time in the Star Wars timeline. This is Star Wars to me. Now, I love all Star Wars, but if I had to pinpoint what is defining in my understanding of Star Wars, it would be this.
Wow.
And, you know, getting Star Wars Insider in 2006, 2007, and reading the magazine and kind of not seeing Revenge of the Sith as you saw it as an end of anything, but actually a beginning for me.
That's funny.
As somebody who was born in 2000, and obviously, so this is the same story for my cousin. It's the same story for a lot of my friends, and obviously, I think that there's you know, it's pretty patently obvious that there's been a real sense of reclaiming of the sequels. I think largely, or sorry, the prequels, largely by, I think, people my age about, who have a real reverent or different appreciation for these films. And I think that comes from the fact that, again, you know, we were little kids when this came out, and it was dark. Of course, it is still. If you put Andor to the side, if you put the thing that's like actually serious to the side, it is sort of the most mature that Star Wars has gotten, barring Andor, and so, I think it's interesting that to me it isn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of falling in love with Star Wars. And by merit of when it came out to me, it wasn't that long until the Clone Wars was out, because the Clone Wars comes out in 2007, right? So that's only it's only a 2-year window when I'm ages 5 to like 7, where I don't have a brand new Star Wars thing, and so all this is fresh to me, and I'm playing Star Wars Battlefront 2, and I'm playing with the toys and the Legos and everything, and the film is fresh to me, and I'm like, okay, well, what's next? The answer is the Clone Wars, and it evolves from there into what we know it as now. But I have a very different vision of this film, and it means something very different to me, I think, than it means to you. And I really think that's interesting, how kind of our perspectives on this diverge.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of eloquent or beautiful in a way where, like, for you, that this Revenge of the Sith is a beginning, because I mean, if you think of like the sort of chronology within the universe, it is the beginning in the sense of like the Empire and all that stuff, and like, yeah, because now I think about it as you're talking about this, I'm thinking of like Force Unleashed. I'm thinking of all the Star Wars things that came out after that, right? You talk about Lego Star Wars, Battlefront 2 that same year at the end. I remember, because right now when we were talking about Kashyyyk, I heard in my head, I heard the map selection, like Kashyyyk, my Jito.
Yeah.
Like, right now as you're saying that, I heard Kashyyyk. But yeah, right. So you would have had Clone Wars. You would have had, I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff that would have been around that time. Lego Star Wars 2, Lego Star Wars 3, Rogues, or did you play Rogues, the Renegade Squadron? That was 2007? No, you probably
that was like a little bit before for me.
Yeah,
because I could have, I guess I could have, because I didn't have a GameCube. I had a PS2 growing up, but then when I got my Wii, I could have played that stuff. I didn't. I mean, the games that were big for me were the Lego Star Wars games were, especially when you're a little kid like that, I didn't really feel like I needed all this other Star Wars. Like, to me, I had those games, like, that was awesome. What more would I want?
There was one of the Battlefronts did come out on DS, right? I want to say.
Yes, Elite Squadron, and it was very different, but that's how I played it, because I didn't have a PSP. Right. But the Star Wars game that was huge for me, monumental, even more than Battlefront 2 is maybe my favorite game ever. But in terms of, because I remember when I got that game, my grandma gave it to me, and at that point, I'd only ever really played Lego Star Wars, and so I couldn't even figure out how to control the game. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to hit square to fight people. It's not working. Like, I was so far beyond my comprehension, because again, I'm a little kid. I had no clue.
Right.
Eventually I came to understand that game and adore it as much as I do. But the big one for me was Force Unleashed. I so vividly remember getting that game for Christmas, and that first mission where you're playing as Darth Vader and you can just throw
all the Wookiees,
fucking blew my mind. I still think the game is great. I replayed it this year. I think the game was great. But that had a very special relationship. I had a very special relationship to it, and it sort of, again, typified this idea of beginnings. The Revenge of the Sith ushered in this still traveled period of the gap between 3 and 4, and because of course Force Unleashed is specifically concerned with that. And it has its own, now no longer canon version of how the rebellion begins to form and everything. But I guess from your point of view, right, as you see Revenge of the Sith as this closing of the book, what did you start to make of Clone Wars coming out and Force Unleashed and all this stuff that kind of was filling in that window of time between 3 and 4? Well, I guess Clone Wars was really 2 and 3, but you get my point, filling in these gaps.
So I remember Clone Wars, the first episode of the show, which was the movie basically. I remember that coming out right as I graduated from high school. I was done with high school, and I remember that coming out, and I was like, okay, it looks like there is going to be another Star Wars movie, but it's not the Star Wars movie in the sense that it's not live action Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor. It's this cartoonified, and at the time I didn't even know it was the first of anything. I thought it was just like a random one-off kind of thing. I think as I was exiting the theater, I heard people talking about it, and I realized, like, oh, this is like the first episode, and going to be like a new like series. And I was like, oh, okay. But at that time, I remember I was turned off by the animation style. This was not the Genevieve, the Tarkovsky kind of style where it was like really like emphasis on action and high speed. this was like the Veggie Tales version of Star Wars, like just this, like, exaggerated proportions, a kind of thing of like a Count Dooku's face is basically a cylinder, like all.
Yeah.
I remember just like this. It wasn't really for me, and I think at that time, what ended up happening, I remember at that time, as I started basically just going to community college, and as the series kind of unraveled and became, I felt at that time like I kind of I think I've basically I've outgrown Star Wars, or maybe I'm not as tuned into what Star Wars is now. This is kind of like, because I didn't really see it as a continuation of a story. It was filling in the gaps of basically episodes 2 and 3, so I didn't really pay too much attention to it until I think much later. Once I had I played Force Unleashed 2, and I think around, I want to say around 2009 or 10, I think I kind of like, this is it, like there is no more. Lucasfilm is still going and doing things, but like as far as the theatrical, as far as anything past Return of the Jedi, like this is kind of it for Star Wars. That's going to be the end cap. We're going to keep going further back, though, I thought, because I remember that's when they showed the MMO for the Old Republic around 2009. And I thought that was the sickest thing ever. Like, okay, this is where the future of Star Wars is going to be for me, where it's going to be, we're going to have other studios or other people playing in the sandbox of Star Wars, but we're not going to go past Return of the Jedi. That's the end cap. That's the end. And any exploration of Star Wars is going to be before this, going further back or filling in the gaps. So I kind of, again, with Force Unleashed, again, filling in the gap, Force Unleashed 2, filling in those gaps, right? So I kind of just, like, this is it. We're not going to go past this end point because George Lucas said so, kind of thing. So we're just going to keep going back and further back. And I was okay with that. Because I love KOTOR. I love KOTOR 2. Of what I played with the Old Republic, I'm not a big MMO guy. I played some of it, but like this is where the fresh ideas are going to come from, I thought. And so I kind of like, we kind of just languished, or not languished, but I kind of just came to terms with like, okay, this is what Star Wars is going to be. And so for me, again, Revenge of the Sith was going to be the last live action, at least Star Wars. Once I saw the Clone Wars one, I'm like, okay, well, that's still the last live action one, so that's still the end of Star Wars, so to speak. And we're just gonna mine this in books and video games, and that I really thought like that's it. There's no more big grand theatrical. I would have never imagined Andor. I would have never imagined the Mandalorian.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, I think the Clone Wars is ugly. I think I would.
What's the word you use? Scrungly. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I think so I've never gone back to the Clone Wars.
Really?
I've seen it, I went back insofar as like when season 6 was on Netflix, and then season 7 I think was Disney Plus.
I binged it all once it came to Netflix. Obviously this was before Disney Plus, but once it came to Netflix, that's when I found like okay, everything's out. I'm gonna catch up and binge it, and I binged it over I want to say like 2 months or so. I like binged the entire thing. I'm like, okay, like I know now who these characters. I know Ahsoka now. I know why people love her. I know Asajj Ventress. I know, okay, and that was like, okay, like that's it. Like we're caught up now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to hope that my sort of sense of nostalgia is sort of a little bit more discerning than the average person, because there's a lot of people my age who are like, man, the Clone Wars is awesome, and I'm like, man, 20% of the Clone Wars was awesome. I think that's a show that suffers from a lot of filler.
Yeah.
And the film in particular is
there's some really good ones.
There's some good stuff.
I really love, it's not very action heavy, but I love when Padme goes to the Confederacy, their version of the Senate, and she kind of sees like how they view the war through their eyes. And I'm like, I thought that was really kind of like very, very mature for that show to do. I like that one.
It's funny to say that, because like as a kid, because I was watching every episode as it came out. That was a non-negotiable in young Abram's life, that I had to see those episodes when they came out. I remember being so disappointed whenever it was another diplomacy episode.
That's funny.
Being like,
for me, like for 19, 20-year-old me, that's like, oh, this is cool. And then for 10 or 9-year-old, I'm like, this is boring.
because I remember, and I remember it'll always stick with me. Even Dave Filoni joking about this. There's like a run of episodes in season 2. They're like all diplomacy stuff, and then there was what I think, as a kid, was like the best episode of the show ever. It was called Landing at Point Rain, and it's a Geonosis episode, which is just basically 22 minutes of just action on Geonosis.
Okay.
And like I remember that so vividly, and be like, oh, finally, yes, I get to see clones. I get to see clones and Jedi like destroy battle droids. But I'm curious to refocus this a little bit now, because I think we got a good sense of what Revenge of the Sith both meant to us at the time, and I kind of alluded a little bit to what it means to me now, having revisited it in the theaters earlier this year. But kind of what does Revenge of the Sith mean to you as an adult? Obviously, having now had 20 years, sit with the film, rewatch it, think about it, have it be recontextualized by stories around it. Do you feel like your thoughts on the film have changed significantly as you've grown with it?
I think about it now. I kind of just think of it as that was George Lucas's last hurrah for Star Wars, and for him on a personal level, I kind of think of how like he had his son in the movie, right, as like the young Jedi that gets killed on the landing pad. He had his daughter in there as like one of the blue people with the senator. I think of how that was probably like we probably knew deep down that was going to be it. I mean, he had heard that the movies weren't that great, episodes 1 and 2 and 3, as they were coming out, and I'm sure he was resigned to the fact that he wasn't going to have the capital. I mean, not monetarily, but like he wasn't going to have the ability to get away with doing those kind of movies again without having heavy maybe studio interference or stuff like that. So I think of it through that lens, but I also think of where I want to say when that film came out compared to episodes 1 and 2, I think most people agreed that was really a really good film. I'm trying to, I remember 2 years later, I had a film class when I was in high school, and I remember when my film teacher we went through the Star Wars films, and I just remember them being, I remember him and another teacher who was there. We had watched all the Star Wars films, like I think within the span of 2 weeks for this film class. And they just remarked about like, oh yeah, Anakin's turns too quick, it's too convenient, or like, oh yeah, that looks really bad. And it wasn't until I want to say probably like about 2 years, kind of like that's the earliest I heard of people really complaining about how not so great in general of how the trilogy was, but also that's when I started hearing like bad things about that movie, because I feel like there was recency bias when it came out, where people generally liked it, or at least told themselves they liked it. I mean, it's my favorite of the prequels by far.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Empire Strikes Back, it probably would be my favorite one. But I like Empire Strikes Back a little bit more. I think it's a better film.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I think back now of what Revenge of the Sith was, or what it is, not just in the timeline of the films, but also like legacy, I think of how impactful that film is, especially meme culture. What about the attack on the Wookiees and of the whole like you're my brother, right? Like that, a lot of memification, especially of that film, more than the first 2 prequels. I feel maybe of any Star Wars film, that film has had a lasting kind of just being burned into our consciousness. Of I listened to several like different like Star Wars podcasts, and like that is, people struggle to really find anything wrong with it compared to the other prequels, or that's kind of the one that people kind of give the most grace to, I think. And I think a lot of that has to do, again, the story of like, of how we end up with A New Hope and all that stuff. But just in general, I think it's really, like you said, like it's the ending for me. It was the ending for me in the sense like, okay, that wraps up the entire Skywalker stuff basically. And you could argue that the sequels kind of dip into that, but not really, because it's whole separated by 30 years in time kind of thing. But like I think of how I'm struggling to come up with the words here, but I think of how when people talk about like lightsaber choreography, like that's the film, right? When they talk about like, for the scale of like the opening, dude. I remember the opening and just like being wowed and amazed of like all this chaos going on. Like you would never be able to pull that off in the original trilogy. And like that was like episode 1, we kind of had like a little bit of that. In episode 2, we kind of had a little bit. I mean, we had that at the end with Geonosis, but like episode 3, just like boom, like here it is. Here's General Grievous. Here's, you know, this is what's happening. The Emperor. Here's the Yoda fight you guys want to see again. Like it's, I feel like where that film is, I feel like it has the least detractors. I feel like a film kind of satisfies almost everybody except maybe the most critical of critics, who again, like they don't like how that where the story goes, or they feel like it's too convenient, too fast, or whatever you say. But
Yeah.
looking at it just in general, 20 years later, it still stands up. I mean, some of the CGI, especially with the clones, is like oh, like it looks bad now, but nowhere near as bad as like Phantom Menace or as Attack of the Clones. Like I think it holds up better than those films visually. It's just, I think again, just like I said, like the culture and the meme of all those different things. I feel it holds up. It holds up, and it wraps up those 6 films nicely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what much more to say other than that.
Yeah, I think it's certainly fair to say that it's the best received of the prequels to this day, and I think that's sort of not likely to change. I think I got a big claim. I think I put this in Discord, but I don't think we ever specifically talked about it. Rewatching Revenge of the Sith in theaters this year, which is, I don't know how many times I've seen it. Probably dozens of times. But now with this theatrical viewing as well, and really sitting with the scale of it and thinking about it in the context of everything that came after, I think it's my favorite Star Wars movie. I think that what Revenge
I think you said that before, though, haven't you? I feel like you have.
For a long time, I would have certainly said it was Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
But I think that with this viewing in particular...
Oh, that's right. I do remember you saying that. Yeah, when we did the Return of the Jedi episode, I remember you talking. Yeah. But
I think I like it a lot in terms of the text of the film. I like a lot what's in the film, but I think it represents, and this is a point kind of larger than Star Wars, I think it represents a particular type of blockbuster that is simply impossible to make now. Revenge of the Sith was sort of made in a context where George Lucas had such a degree of creative and financial control over the project that he was able to basically have these incredibly huge, incredibly lavish digital tableaus to do with as he saw fit, and had no one really to tell him not to do anything.
I think McCallum in the back were like, okay, all right, go ahead.
Yeah. and like, that's not what Star Wars is anymore. But that's also not what almost any major studio blockbuster is.
It's all by committee.
Yeah, and I don't even necessarily think that that's like an intrinsically an issue. But the stakes of filmmaking like this are just different. And, you know, I think you can rightfully criticize how something like The Force Unleashed walks a little too closely in the footsteps of A New Hope in terms of its plotting and writing and theming. But there's still a lot of exceptional stuff about Force Awakens. I think that the sort of collaborative spirit that has governed a lot of Star Wars stuff has turned out some great films and great TV shows. Some, I think, pretty bad ones as well, but a lot of really great stuff. However, I think that there's a very unique quality to a film like Revenge of the Sith that simply is as close to the unfiltered vision of somebody like George Lucas that we rarely ever see. Yeah. Because also you have to think about ILM at the time as the top of the field when it comes to visual effects. And so what they were able to do in that film, I agree with you, there's edges of it that still look off today, but I think by and large the way that the CG environments are rendered, the way that they're lit, the way that you really feel like there's a camera in those moments is masterful in a way that I think that the outsourced crunched, get it across the line approach to CGI that dominates Hollywood and has for a while is just not present here. There's something beautiful about Revenge of the Sith. Yeah. I think there's a real beauty to it from a technical point of view and from a creative point of view. It, as George Lucas, unencumbered by anything and anybody, just saying, look, you might not like this vision, and there are people who don't, but this is simply the story as I want to tell it. I think that that's very incredible. And I think that the result of it is something that, for me, revisiting it, manages to dip a little bit into different kinds of Star Wars. And something that I think I really like about our approach to Star Wars when we talk about it is that for us, Star Wars is many different things. You can have an Andor, and then you can have a Rebels, or you can have a Mandalorian and an Acolyte and then a Visions, whatever. It all exists together. But I think a lot of it represents one side of Star Wars. I think Revenge of the Sith represents a lot of them. Because when I think about the film, I think about those quippy moments. I think about hello there, and I'm thinking about dropping down to see Grievous. I'm thinking that, and
we're supposed to be smarter than this.
Exactly. I'm thinking about R2 sparring with a buzz droid on the wing of the ship. There's a lot that is goofy and speaks to this ardent belief that George Lucas has always maintained that Star Wars is for kids. You can see that in this film. You see that side of things. But you also see this much more politically curious side of Star Wars as well, in the way that we are watching the rebellion, the Republic fall, and it being replaced, and the sort of cult of personality around Palpatine, and this discord he sows with the Jedi Alliance or the Jedi Council, and then the Galactic Senate. I think that that's very interesting too, and it speaks to this other aspect of Star Wars. And then there's just this sort of adventurous spirit. The amount of different planets we visit, the amount of different plot lines we follow in parallel, the moments for just great, smart filmic set pieces. I love the elevators in Grievous's capital ship earlier in the film. I think that that's like just a really smartly executed scene. There's great tension with R2 versus the B2 super battle droids, as he needs to get the elevator moving, and then the elevators are moving wrong, and we're stuck in the chasm of the elevator shaft, and then Obi-Wan wakes up. You have all these different tones and all these different ideals, and they sort of all speak to what goes into the soup of the larger Star Wars universe. And they don't always quite interlock quite right. I would agree that there's pacing issues with the film. I would agree that sort of the character writing isn't always at the strongest. But I think that when I take it as a whole, it's sort of, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. So there's no doubt a nostalgic component to this, but it really, to me, typifies everything that Star Wars is and can be. And I think that to put that all in these beautifully rendered tableaus straight from George's head to the screen, is very singular, and it's very unique, and it's not the type of film that I think we'll ever get to see again from Star Wars. And I don't lament that, because I love Disney era Star Wars. I don't sort of hold it in the contempt that even many of my peers who have reclaimed the prequels have. I just see all of these as different chapters. But I think if I had to earmark one chapter that means the most to me, it's this real, raw, in some ways messy, but in many ways beautiful chapter that George put on the screen for us in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I think you put it well, Abram, because I thinking about all the things you said, I'm like, it really does kind of do everything, and I think some people probably would pick out that maybe that's why it seems kind of just a little muddy, but we were talking about like we see the different planets. I remember now what I love so much about Star Wars, or when we see the different films, is like one thing I lament about the original trilogy is like they just didn't really have the budget to show all these different places. It's like 1 or 2 planets per film.
Yeah.
And I think of Revenge of the Sith. I remember the first time in the theater, scene when they execute Order 66, and we quickly see all these different settings of all these different Jedi. We see, Kiadi Mundia and Maijito. I'm like, oh, like he's like on this big ice bridge. I wonder where that is, because they don't say, it's Maijito
Yeah.
in the movie, but like, and then we see Ayla Sakura on I want to say
Felicia.
Fallujah.
Yeah.
I always think I'm saying it wrong, because I'm thinking of what's that game, 7 Days in Fallujah. I think Fallujah, and I mix up with Fallujah, and I'm like, wait, no, that's the country. And so I always mix that one up. But like the big giant like plants, I'm like, where is that? Like, what is that? Like, and that, seeing it later in that year in Battlefront 2, but like you see what's his name, Plo Koon, like flying in the jets, and like I was like where are all these like quick snapshots of all these? I love how that film makes the universe feel very alive. When you see Kashyyyk, you see Utapau, you see Maijito, you see Mustafar. I love how you see those guys who are like on those platforms on Mustafar, like they're like mining or scooping up. I was like, it's such a small detail, but it's like, oh, like there is organisms here performing a menial job in Star Wars. Not everybody's a Jedi, not everyone's like a stormtrooper or a clone trooper. Like there's people just living their lives, right? They're just kind of just doing their thing. Or like later on when we go to Polis Massa, right? When we see where there's that guy in the foreground who sees like, Obi-Wan land or whatever, and like he's out there like, I don't know, is checking mineral levels or whatever. Like I love those little details that you could see like a more reined in studio would have been like, do we have the time and the budget to put all this extra stuff? Like it, going back to what you're talking about like what's, what can be done by how George gets away with certain things. I could see George being like, yeah, let's put that guy in the foreground. Let's kind of like, let's fill up the screen a little and kind of make it seem more populated. The nurse droids that like just this extra detail of things that are like, I mean, we talked about this before. The cynic in me says toys, extra toys. And then the non-cynic in me is like, oh no, he's just filling in. It's just scenery. It's extra scenery, kind of just filling up.
Yeah.
And Revenge of the Sith is full of a lot of that. When we pass by and the ships are like galleons, like Spanish galleons, just launching cannons and ejecting shells, and the super battle droids are dealing with R2, and he slides down and crashes into that pile of like machine parts and like all these extra things that are not necessary, but they're there, and they kind of just fill in more of like that universe. And I think that's what I love about the prequel trilogy, but especially of Revenge of the Sith, where we have Obi-Wan on this. We don't know what this. It's like a camel. It's a new creature. Could have easily been like what do you call it? I'm blanking on the horn things. Bantha. It could have been a bantha. So let's throw in a desert Tatooine camel just for the hell of it. It's like it could have been one of those like the lizards. I forget what the lizards are called, but the ones that stormtroopers use. The dewbacks. Thank you. I always forget the names. But like I just love how they just fill in everything just for the sake of filling in things, and your imagination, at least mine, I think most people, I mean for both of us, like that stuff makes it seem more live, and the more real or the more alive, the more invested you are in, and the more invested you are, the more those things that are seen as kind of like not that effective, they kind of hit a little bit harder because you believe it does. So
I agree completely. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this existing for the sake of toys point, because it's one that's often brought up, both by us, but also broadly by people talking about Star Wars. Excuse me. And I think that the way I've been reframing this in my mind is that I think that making a toy out of these things is a happy consequence downstream from having a creative idea. And like I think about the firefighter ships of Coruscant, right? You were mentioning as you were talking there these different moments in the film where it feels alive because we're kind of understanding the ecology or culture community of these places that doesn't interact with the plot in any way, but instead it's just sort of interacting with the idea of Star Wars as a living, breathing universe. And so whenever we see these details, yes, it's great that they can then become toys as well, but I think you can sell so many Anakin action figures that do you really need to make a toy of the firefighter ship? I don't know. You can certainly, but I think that the merchandising kind of takes care of itself with the principal characters. So I sort of think about these things through the lens of, and I was this is really prompted a lot by my most recent viewing of exactly as you're saying, what can we achieve by having these details that, as you're saying, take the viewer's imagination in a particular direction. I think that that's a very powerful, a very powerful aspect of cinema is unanswered questions. And the way that you sort of involve yourself more in the experience and become a more active viewer by imagining what's happening out of the frame. And I think that this film is so good at allowing you to do that and giving you moments to do that. Mm-hmm. And all of the ones you cited, these little characters on Polis Massa or on Mustafar or on Coruscant, it's giving you and it's sort of inviting you to say, well, what was this firefighter ship doing yesterday? What fire were they putting out? You know, what is it like being on Mustafar here? Because we know it as this hostile, unforgiving place that we just show up for a consequential fight where we know that somebody's gonna die, and of course we know who it's gonna be. But what is it like when you just live on Mustafar, and that's your home and that's your job?
Yeah.
I think that sort of quizzical element is part of what makes the prequels so great, and why I think they're so rich for expanded storytelling. And I think a lot of it, even if not directly, exists in the frames of Revenge of the Sith, and sort of gets somebody like a Dave Filoni wondering, okay, well, what could I do over that hill over there? Or get the team at Pandemic and Free Radical thinking, okay, what could we do with Felucia as a game map? I think that it's just a film that prompts active participation and curiosity, and that's what Star Wars has what's at its best.
Yeah, I think you kind of just summed it all up. Just Revenge of the Sith. I mean, as it is, as I just think of the seeing it in theaters, like you said, this year, and that little forward, that little prologue of Hayden Christensen showing up on the screen and like talking about how special the film is to him, and like how much it resonates with Star Wars fans. This one particularly, of all the ones he did, I just still resonates with fans. And I mean, was that statistic about this was like the highest grossing re-release of a film, I think, in general, or at least of all the Star Wars ones, I think.
I think it is ever. I'd have to double check, but I think I remember reading that. Yeah.
Yeah, of any film that's ever been like re-released again. And it's like, I think there's something to it that within this of Star Wars, of them doing the re-release of the original trilogy in theaters back in the 90s, and then doing again the 3D of Phantom Menace back in like 2000, I want to say 13 or 12, around there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I saw that too. And just how like this is the one. I mean, you could say, maybe it's inflated by, budget or inflation or just more people, obviously just bigger population now than it was 20 years ago or so or whatever. But just the idea that this is the one that they chose to, because Attack of the Clones didn't get that treatment, and obviously, like, it's kind of hard to be excited. I like Attack of the Clones, but I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And so for Revenge of the Sith to be the one that gets these accolades, that gets all this, just thinking about everything, not just what we mentioned, but I think it is, I think, the most traumatic of the Star Wars films as well. Just thinking of Anakin with the whole, like, he doesn't want to lose Padme. And I love the moment where, I know we're going to talk too much about this plot, but just, I love the moment where he's kind of just smoldering, where Mace Windu and he gets the Jedi, they go to confront Palpatine, and Anakin's kind of just there thinking, like, what am I supposed to do? And he starts crying, and then we see on the horizon, again, that beautiful, on the other side of the horizon, we see Padme in her own apartment, and she's crying, and just like it's so good. It just like, it fills you with, I remember seeing that again this year at the theaters, and just kind of being like how that music, like that kind of like low growling music, and just like, oh, like it hits hard. And like, I think of any of the Star Wars films, this is the one that gets me like tearing up. I don't really feel that for Phantom Menace. It's with a joyful, happy ending. I don't feel that for a little bit of Attack of the Clones, but that's more of a romantic sense because of the whole, the little marriage thing at the end. But like, I don't. A New Hope is a ceremony. Like, I mean, as we go on, like this is the one that has like that gut punch, that kind of where it sits between those six films. It is the halfway point, and it's kind of like it's almost the Empire Strikes Back again, but if you saw it through the lens of all six of those films, where it sits in that dark place of where our characters are at, and everyone's down on their luck. The Empire's here. We have the just everything's going bad, and it is kind of the Empire Strikes Back is the Empire Strikes Back of the original trilogy, but this one sits of those six films of the Skywalker saga. It is that. It is the music, oh my god, are you kidding me? The whole was it Battle? I'm trying to remember the name. Battle of the Fates, right? I'm trying to remember the name. Duel of the Fates. There you go. I always confuse it with the no, Duel of the Fates is the Phantom Menace one, isn't it? That's a Clash of Heroes or something of Heroes. Battle of Heroes. I forgot that. I forgot. Oh, I have my Star Wars card revoked here. But I'm trying. It's
Battle of the Heroes.
Battle of the Heroes. Okay, I knew it was something Heroes, and just like it's such a, like you said, Andor's side. This is like the darkest of the theatrical films. It's the gut punch. It's the emotional. It's where all these things happen. We lose Padme in birth, in she's giving birth, and then we get those, the little happy little moment with the double sons, and here's the prodigal son. We got Luke getting delivered to Owen, and Obi-Wan going into exile, and all the when the chips are down, like everything's just really dark, and I think it just helps that this film has, like you said, visually, story, tonally, musically, it has so much going for it, and I feel like a lot of, even for the video games, I feel like Revenge of the Sith is probably one of the biggest contributors overall in terms of music that they borrow for like some of the games, plot points that they kind of roll with, things that they integrate, like character wise. I mean, think of how much stories have been expanded on with, not just with Clone Wars, but the idea of like we have these these Magnum guards and like these extra clone troopers. Think of what the clone troopers have done for Clone Wars, but also for Rebels, for some of the other like expanded universe stuff. Like Revenge of the Sith really sits in that spot where it's I feel like it contributes the most to the overall expanded universe than any other of the Star Wars films.
Yeah, certainly, and I think so. Just the last thing I would note is what you were talking earlier about this sort of real emotive quality the film has. These moments between Anakin and Padme, these moments between Obi-Wan and Anakin, all of these moments that I think are looked at sometimes as moments of bad acting or bad writing. And I think that you can, if you want to look at it through that lens, I think that's okay. But I look at it from the point of view of there's a unique rhythm to how this film is written and delivered. And one thing that like we've heard about George as a director from different actors is that he has a very clear vision of how these deliveries should happen. How lines are supposed to be delivered, how actors are supposed to carry themselves in the frame. And so I just don't view that as his instincts being wrong. I view it as his instincts being different. And I think that this film does a really excellent job of having this melodramatic quality to it that sure can be hammy, sure can be campy, but I think there's an earnestness to how everybody bought into George's vision for how they should perform their roles. And it gives the film a very unique texture. And so you're totally right that from the lore perspective, it carries all of this iconography and all these ideas that, as you gave all those great examples, have sort of percolated outward. But I also think that, for as much as it has a lot to give away and a lot to inform, it has at its heart this very particular sensibility that all the prequels do. But I think that George Lucas found it in Revenge of the Sith. He found the most refined way to have these characters carry themselves. And I think it's resulted in iconic performances that, as you were saying, can be taken from this perspective, from this meme-like perspective when you remove them from their context. But I think that in their context, they really work because everybody's operating in this wavelength. So yeah, there's just so much you can say about this film. And I'm just really glad we got to sort of take the opportunity to go back and forth about how we
Finally.
both... Yeah. Yes. We had many different factors out of our control intervening. But we've had the opportunity to sit down and really share what this film means to us. And how it has touched us differently, but I think how we have a sort of similar reverence for it. And sort of similarly view its importance and reclamation as key to Star Wars. And it's just very nice for somebody like Hayden Christensen to, as it is also for Ahmed Best, but obviously Jar Jar doesn't, this isn't the Jar Jar conversation, but the fact that these characters and moreover these actors have sort of been welcomed back by the community and are really treated with the reverence they should have. It's always nice to see, and I do hope that similar thing happens for people like Kelly Marie Tran and John Boyega from the sequel trilogy, who were, I think, treated unfairly. And I hope that they similarly get what Hayden Christensen has, as you were saying at the opening, in that sort of prelude to the re-release version. They have that moment to say, hey, look, past is what it is, but we're here now. And this work touches you differently, and it's meant something to you, and I really like that, and I just really hope that the positivity that's been fostered in this film is sort of a shared to others that I think deserve a similar moment of reclamation. But anything else you want to add about the film, Andrew?
I mean, loosely related, going to the re-release this year, just a couple moments that it's weird. Sometimes when I watch Star Wars films again, like there is still like certain things that just like stick out to me. But I had a really good time watching it again and listening to the audience. I don't know about your viewing, if they like clapped or went off at certain parts, but a couple notable ones were of course, Master Skywalker. There's too many of them. What do we do? And then the hiss of the lightsaber, and then my audience started clapping and like kind of cheering, like, oh my god, they're like excited about this child slaughter that happens off screen. But also just like I think I mentioned this in the Discord, but when at the end, when there was this moment at the end of the film. Well, again, this is when Obi-Wan does a passing off of Luke and he retreats and the music starts playing and my eyes start watering, and my wife, she had never, this was the one I purposely held off on her watching. She had seen all the other five, the first five, but I wanted her to see this. When I found out this was coming to theater, I told her, wait, we're going to watch this one in theaters. And my eyes swelled and she turned to me and she's like, she was looking at me and she's like, it's like, oh, like this really matters to you, huh? Like she told me that, and I was like, I'm like, it sounds. I told her, I'm like, this sounds kind of silly, but yeah, Star Wars matters a lot to me. And so, kind of just having that moment again, that moment, I guess maybe for the first time, really, but of like, someone in my life recognizing. I mean, obviously you see the Star Wars stuff, and like, but like that moment of like, because she had never. I mean, she's seen me cry for certain things, but not for media. You know what I mean? Not for any kind of media, and kind of like the music swelling, and like I couldn't really help it. My emotions kind of just, it's just that framing of Owen and Beru, and just like this, Abram, it gets you. The resignation of like loss, but also the hopefulness, and like it just got me. And that when she said that, like she said that, like it clicked for her, like, oh, like this is something special for me. Like yeah, it is. So just those two things: the kids getting slaughtered and people laughing at that. And just in that little touchy moment where like we kind of had like a little connection where she understood just that Star Wars isn't just like another like Fast and Furious or Marvel thing kind of to me. So just that, yeah.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful note to end on, but can't be the final note because you gotta take us out.
I don't know if it shows up so well right there, but may the Force be with you.